in today. And, you know, these kind of the self-care of this is so critical. And we, you know, I checked the calm box in the survey. Staying calm is so important. And it's very easy when others are having a hard time, when people are going through grief, when people are going through adjustment disorders. And sometimes when somebody who normally is a high performer is all of a sudden reacting in a very different way, or somebody who you expect them to be steady and are freezing or are not doing anything, sometimes you want to lash out as a leader. You know, you bite your tongue and you sort of step back and saying, well, first of all, why am I reacting? But why are they in that place? And so that perspective of finding your own balance, we've used that word here, for yourself in these 6 questions is just one way to do it. I'm sure there are many other questions you could ask yourself, but then stepping back and understanding where others are and what challenges they're having to provide that steady, calm perspective. So I just want to throw that out from my side about the self-care. I think, Kathy, you asked Lisa that. How are you taking care of yourself? Is so critical, I find, in being balanced as we're dealing with the challenges of other staff who are not necessarily reacting always in the way that they were pre-COVID. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
No, thanks, Aaron. You mentioned finding your own balance, and I like that. And actually, that sort of idea, phrased as self-awareness, is a leadership trait that's come up with the leaders that we talked about a few minutes ago. Let's go way down south to Judy Mann. Are you still on, Judy?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what everyone has been saying has been amazing, and it's all really, really relevant. And I think that we've all been taking notes and thinking and internalizing it. But just a couple of things from a South African perspective. I'm really proud to be able to say that we can use a South African leader as a positive example. And when this whole thing started, Ramaphosa did something that was really, really important. And the first thing he did was he actually got all of the political leaders in South Africa to stand up behind him and agree with the decisions that were being made to go into lockdown. And this was absolutely fundamental in a country as divided as we are. So he first did the lobbying behind the scenes. And I think that that's something that we can apply in our own situations as well, because when tough decisions are being made, knowing that there is a united front being presented and that people are on the same page, I think is an important point. And that's stood him in good stead as all the criticism inevitably comes along the way. So I think that that's something that was a useful one. And then something that we haven't maybe mentioned, or we've only mentioned slightly, is being able to keep the mission alive. Often our staff are questioning, why are we still doing this? If we're going to run out of money, if we can't do conservation, there's no more law enforcement on the ground, why are we still trying? And I think that for us, it's keeping that mission alive and keeping the why behind what we do. So we're dealing with everything and we're trying to do it the best way we can, but it's just keeping the staff inspired and helping them to see life beyond where we are now, and that we will be able to get back in the field. We will be able to do what we need to do with our animals out of our facility. We will still be able to conserve. There will still be a world to conserve. So I think that everyone said all the other points that I'd sort of thought about, but for me, it's really just keeping that inspiration going and being able to keep inspiring people beyond COVID, that there is still a world to care about, and keeping that mission alive, I think just, yeah, from our side is really important.
Thank you. And we will, Zoo Advisors will be hosting another webinar on the mission on keeping conservation alive in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. I did want to touch on, I saw a couple hands raised before we get to that quickly. Susan Altrui, what are you seeing from a Little Rock perspective? What have you been thinking about?
Well, just some fantastic contributions to this discussion. But just quickly, one of the things that we're doing here in Little Rock, and I think it's kind of a metaphor, is literally getting into the weeds. My leadership team has been helping out with our horticulture team, and I've been using that as a metaphor to get into the nitty-gritty of leadership and the nitty-gritty of our organization. I think one of the silver linings of all of this is we've had to pitch in and help in areas that we normally probably wouldn't, because right now we're split into two different teams to help to cut down on contact between team members. That's meant that a lot of us in the senior staff level, the executive leadership level, have had to step up to the plate and help in all different areas of the zoo that we might not have otherwise been doing. So our roles have changed. That's provided us with an opportunity to work side by side with our staff in a way that I think has been hugely beneficial. So I think literally getting in the weeds is good. It's a great thing to do right now, to be side by side with your staff, working with them, showing that kind of level of support. And we literally were pulling weeds this past week. It was quite interesting, but hugely beneficial to them to show that kind of support. And also too, I think secondly, a big lesson that we've learned is to be okay in the space of the unknown. That's been a lesson that I've learned. And that has been a lesson that I've had to really just learn along with my staff and encourage them to be okay with that space of the unknown, and to say it's all right. We just have to take a breath and be okay not knowing what's next and not knowing what's to come. And we might not have the answer today. We might not have it tomorrow, but we will have an answer sometime. But there is a lot of unknown that's out there. And I think that especially people in science fields, we're very used to having that clear-cut sort of answer. And we're very used to planning and executing, and this is the way it's going to be, and we can predict it, and we have a model to predict it. But this is a situation where we're not going to necessarily have all the answers. And so we have to learn how to operate in that space of the unknown.
Thank you. A great comment, Susan. We have a couple hands raised here. I see Daniel and then Jackie Ogden from our team. Daniel.
Hello. One of the things that as all of you are talking, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing that you're sharing. I've put together a diagram that I've been referencing multiple times in kind of how this works. I'll try to share it this way on my iPad. But what we've been talking about is really this blue thing is the mission and the core of the DNA that continues through. And what happened down here was we had business, the old ways of doing things is this red line, and many things just dropped and let go of. We let go of immediately because of crisis response. We have this orange arc of crisis response that ramps up, and that some of that will eventually ramp down. Some of those things will continue. There's also this new line of green possibilities that I'm hearing a lot of this adaptive cycle language from you about what are we letting go of? What are we growing into? And so what I've found with the teams that I'm working with is this message of hope that even though a lot of us are focused in this orange line of crisis response, there is this green line growing of what's beyond COVID. And I think it's really important that the things I'm noticing is that when we are able to, as leaders, both zoom in and take care of what's happening right now, but also zoom out and say, and this is a nod to Zoo Advisor's title of this series, The New Tomorrow. What is that new tomorrow? And remind people about there is something growing. Every time we let go of something in a natural system, it's not it's a release of energy and resources, that that energy and resources can be reallocated, can be readjusted, can adapt to create that new life, that new tomorrow that's coming. So that's one of the things that I've been sharing is the adaptive cycle and this image that shows people that even though it's hard right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, the arc is towards this new possibility, these new opportunities.
Daniel, thanks. I really like that we're using the word hope again. That is so important. Hey, Jackie Ogden, how about it?
Hey, so it's great to be with you all. My apologies for being a little bit late. I'm weirdly doing a three-day workshop that's all on Zoom. It's like making my head's a little exploding right now. I wanted just to share. So first, of course, you all know I love this conversation, and I love hearing from all of our different leaders. And I also just love seeing how great leadership is really showing up right now within the association, and it just makes me so happy. I loved also Daniel's comments. I agree with Kathy. I'm so happy to hear people talk about hope. And so what I'm going to say may sound like I am running counter to that, and I'm not. What you all know that I have a reputation of being sort of Sister Mary Sunshine. But what I have found to also be really helpful during times like this, we've not had a time like this in my lifetime, but at challenging times and really challenging times, is to not sugarcoat things. Because I can be overly optimistic sometimes and overly positive. And my experience is that in times like this, the leaders that are the most successful are the ones that, while acknowledging, as Danny was talking about, that yes, there is hope out there, and yes, we will find opportunities and we'll come out to the other side, and all of that is great, to not be overly positive, because I think sometimes people find that to not be authentic. And to to acknowledge that, in fact, there are aspects of this that just suck. And then from there, you can build into the more positive stuff that we've all been talking about. But just acknowledging that, and then acknowledging that this is hard for people. So,
yeah, thanks, Jackie. I think we're going to keep this moving along, but Jackie's last word about acknowledging things. We will send you a link. We'll do a wrap up on this, and we will post a link to an amazing, very brief video with the director of the Ohio State Health System, who ends up using the word acknowledge because it's helping people to own things. I'm acknowledging you. I'm acknowledging that this does suck, that this is difficult. We'll make sure we send you that link. Thank you for the reminder. We're going to move along to another slide and a chance to get your input here. And we've talked a lot about leadership just now, some of the old, some of the new, some of the challenges we've seen. But as we are coaches and supervisors, leaders ourselves, what training or coaching do you think might be needed for people in our field as we look ahead? What have we learned from COVID-19? We're going to ask you then we'll give you a couple of minutes. We're just wrapping this up. If you would please post in the chat room your answer to that question, and we'll gang them all together. And this is not a poll, so answer it right in the chat room, please. What kind of training do we need? I'm not seeing a lot of activity. Are you guys answering? Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep those cards and letters coming in. We'll give you another 30 seconds or so to finish your answers, and then turning things back to David, who's going to wrap it up and bring us home.
Oh, keep sharing your comments on training gaps or coaching, or where else you think things are needed. As Kathy said, we will be providing a recap of this to you and going through that list and seeing where those needs are. But really some great conversation. And wanted to wrap it up with this quote from Brené Brown about being a brave leader. And it's, the themes that we've heard throughout today really resonate here in terms of keeping listening and asking questions. I think all of us, me included, we don't have all the answers. And I think for those of you that have joined our webinars over the last 8 weeks, I think we're now in our 8th or 9th webinar. When we started this, I kind of had a question of, well, we need to do something and we need to provide people with answers. But we didn't have those answers. But we just said we want to create a space for people to talk, for people to share, for people to just kind of work out some of their questions. And so that's what we've tried to do, because we don't have the answers. No one has all the answers on how to move through this. But I think the more we talk, the more we collaborate, we can help get through this. A couple of things that kind of struck me here today in the conversation is this talk of hope, but also balancing it with vulnerability. Yes, I feel vulnerable. I feel, vulnerable is, I'm feeling at risk for kind of what our future looks like, what from a business perspective, the future looks like, that vulnerability, and wanting to share that, but at the same time being hopeful and optimistic. In some days, some hours, it's like, yep, I'm hopeful, but also like, oh, worried to death about kind of what's going to be happening next. And I think really balancing those two feelings is really important. So we will continue to create these spaces for people to share and provide some different thoughts and ideas. Next week, we will be hosting a session on engagement and education strategies, and talking about how those strategies and how education engagement will be changing with this new tomorrow. So please join in. If you don't have the link, you can find it on our website, and we'll be sending out the email recap of this next Tuesday. But I know there's also a lot of great webinars happening. AZA has just announced some more webinars that they're doing as part of their different groups. So check out AZA's website as well for more information. But thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to end this with Lisa's comment. Take time to feed your soul. Get outside, take a breath of fresh air, go for a walk. Just take time for yourselves, because feeding your soul is so important, and so important in that self-care. So thank you all for the great comments, great feedback from all of those people that we reached out to before, but everybody else that had some good thoughts. Kathy, any final comments you'd like to add?
I miss being in the same room with you all, but thank you for sharing your screens with us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.